Danny Harper smelled like engine oil and sweat when he finally stepped onto the transport ship. His clothes were stained with grease, and his hands were still dirty from the emergency repair job he had just finished. 16 hours he had worked without a break, fixing the station's life support system before it killed everyone on board. The station manager had been so grateful that he gave Danny a first-class ticket for the next transport out. Danny had never sat in first class before. He was looking forward to the comfortable seat and maybe some decent food. The transport was packed with beings from all across the galaxy. Danny recognized at least 20 different species in the main boarding area. There were tall Valorians with their blue skin and 4 arms. Small chitters clicked and buzzed as they moved in family groups. Zentarii merchants floated past in their environmental suits filled with the thick liquid they breathed. Everyone was heading to the same place. The annual remembrance ceremony at the Galactic Hub Station. It was the biggest event of the year, honoring those who died in the old wars. Danny found his seat number and was about to head toward the first-class section when he heard the commotion near the main airlock. The transport's crew members were arguing with each other in loud voices. A crowd was forming. Danny moved closer to see what was happening. That was when he saw the dragon. Commander Vraxis stood in the boarding tunnel, too large to move through easily. His scales were deep red, almost black in places where old scars had changed their color. He was missing his left wing entirely. Only a stump remained where it had been torn away long ago. The dragon's eyes were ancient, carrying the weight of centuries. Those eyes looked tired now, as he spoke with the transport captain. "I apologize for the inconvenience," Vraxis said. His voice was deep and rumbled like distant thunder. "I did not realize reservations were required. I have not traveled in many years." The captain, a nervous chitter named Kelso, waved his front legs frantically. "Sir, Commander, we are completely full. The ceremony has caused every ship to overbook. I have no space large enough for someone of your size." Danny knew who Vraxis was. Everyone knew the Dragon veterans. They had fought in the Void War 50 years ago when the Harvesters came. The mechanical monsters had swept through the galaxy, destroying everything in their path. They broke apart ships and turned living beings into fuel for their endless expansion. The dragons had been the galaxy's last defense. They threw themselves at the Harvesters, using their massive bodies as living shields while the younger species evacuated their worlds. Thousands of dragons died in that war. The ones who survived carried scars that would never heal. Danny's grandfather had told him stories. Old Pete Harper had been a young cargo pilot back then, barely capable of flying between Earth's moon and Mars. He had seen the battle at Saturn's rings. He watched dragons hold the line against a harvester fleet, while refugee ships escaped behind them. Pete never forgot what he saw that day. He made sure Danny never forgot either. "Perhaps there is space in the cargo hold," Vraxis was saying. "I do not require comfort." "Absolutely not," Kelso buzzed. "A war hero in the cargo hold? The council would have my shell." The first-class passengers watched from their comfortable section. Danny could see them through the transparent wall. Wealthy Zentarii merchants whispered to each other. Corporate executives from various species pretended to read their data pads. Nobody was offering to help. They all had important business at the ceremony. They all had paid good money for their seats. A Dragon veteran's problem was not their concern. Danny looked down at his ticket. First class, expanded seating area, perfect for someone large. He thought about his grandfather's stories. He thought about the dragons who never came home from that war. He thought about all the people alive today because those dragons had died protecting them. He pushed through the crowd and walked up to Vraxis. "Commander," Danny said, "I have a first-class ticket. The expanded seating area. You should take it." Vraxis looked down at the small human. Danny barely came up to the dragon's chest. "That is kind, young one, but unnecessary. I will find other arrangements." "With respect, sir, there are no other arrangements," Danny said. He held out his ticket. "Please, I'll be fine in economy." "You are human," Vraxis said slowly. "Your kind was not even part of the Void War. You owe me nothing." "My grandfather saw what you did at Saturn," Danny replied. "He told me about it my whole life. How the dragons held the line. How they saved everyone, even species they'd never met before. He said humanity wouldn't be here without that sacrifice. So yeah, I owe you. We all do. The crowd had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now. Vraxis stared at Danny for a long moment. Something shifted in those ancient eyes. Maybe it was surprise. Maybe it was respect. Maybe it was just exhaustion finally meeting with kindness. What is your name, human? Danny Harper, sir. Mechanic. Nothing special. Nothing special, Vraxis repeated. A sound like grinding stones came from his throat. Danny realized the dragon was laughing. Very well. Danny Harper. I accept your gift. Though I suspect you are more special than you believe. Danny handed over his ticket and picked up his worn bag. Kelso practically vibrated with relief as he processed the ticket transfer. The first-class passengers suddenly found other things to look at. Some of them looked embarrassed. Most just looked annoyed that a dragon would be in their section now. Danny made his way to economy. The seats were tiny and packed close together. He squeezed in between a family of chitters who smelled like cinnamon and a Valorian who was already asleep, his knees pressed against the seat in front of him. There was nowhere to put his bag except on his lap. This was going to be a long trip. As the transport's engines powered up and the ship pulled away from the station, Danny closed his eyes. He was too tired to care about the uncomfortable seat. At least he had done the right thing. At least his grandfather would have been proud. He didn't know that his simple choice had just changed everything. He didn't know that in a few hours, he would need Commander Vraxis just as much as the old dragon needed that seat. He didn't know that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest ripples across the galaxy. All Danny knew was that he was tired, his seat was uncomfortable, and he had a long trip ahead of him. He fell asleep thinking about his grandfather's stories and wondering what the remembrance ceremony would be like. In the first-class section, Commander Vraxis settled into the expanded seating area. His old bones appreciated the space. His scarred body appreciated the comfort. But most of all, his ancient heart appreciated the reminder that honor still existed in the galaxy, even in small, oil-stained humans who worked 16-hour shifts and gave away their comfort without thinking twice. The dragon looked at the small identification card Danny had left behind with his ticket. He memorized the name. Danny Harper. Mechanic. He had a feeling that name would be important soon. Danny woke up 2 hours into the journey with a crick in his neck and someone tapping his shoulder. He opened his eyes to see Captain Kelso standing in the narrow aisle between economy seats. Mr. Harper? The chitter captain buzzed quietly. Would you please come with me? Danny rubbed his eyes and tried to stretch in the tiny space. Is something wrong? Not at all. Commander Vraxis has requested your presence in the first-class lounge. The chitters beside Danny clicked excitedly among themselves. The sleeping Valorian cracked one eye open and grunted with what might have been approval. Danny grabbed his bag and followed Kelso through the narrow corridor toward the front of the ship. The first-class lounge was nothing like economy. The space was large and open, with actual windows showing the stars streaming past as the ship traveled through faster-than-light space. Comfortable seating pods were arranged around low tables. A refreshment station offered food and drinks from dozens of different worlds. And sitting in the largest pod, taking up nearly a quarter of the lounge, was Commander Vraxis. Thank you, Captain, the dragon said. That will be all. Kelso bowed and scurried away. Danny stood awkwardly near the entrance, still holding his bag. He felt very aware of his dirty work clothes and the fact that he probably smelled bad. Sit, young Danny Harper, Vraxis said, gesturing to a pod near him. I wish to thank you properly for your kindness. It has been a long time since anyone showed me such consideration. Danny sat down carefully. The pod adjusted to his shape automatically, more comfortable than any chair he had ever used. You don't need to thank me, Commander. It was just a seat. Just a seat. Vraxis repeated. That grinding laugh came again. Perhaps. But the gesture was more than just a seat. Tell me, do you often give away things of value to strangers? I don't have much of value to give away, Danny admitted. But when I do have something, and I see someone who needs it more, then yeah, I guess I do. Vraxis studied him with those ancient eyes. Your grandfather. You said he saw the battle at Saturn? Pete Harper. He flew cargo ships. Not even military. Just civilian transport trying to help with the evacuation. He was there when the harvesters broke through the defense line. Said it would have been the end if you and your wing hadn't shown up. The dragon's expression shifted. Grief flickered across his features. My wing. Yes. We were 300 strong that day. Only 47 survived to see the next dawn. We held that line for 6 hours while the refugee ships escaped. I'm sorry, Danny said quietly. Do not be. We knew what we fought for. Every ship that escaped carried thousands of lives. Every minute we held meant more beings reached safety. It was a fair trade. Vraxis paused. Though I still see their faces sometimes. My wingmates. The ones who did not return. They sat in silence for a moment. Danny didn't know what to say to that kind of loss. The Void War had ended before he was born. But the galaxy still carried its scars. The remembrance ceremony, Danny said finally. Yes, I have not attended before. The memories were too painful. But 50 years have passed, and I am old, even by dragon standards. If I do not go now, I may never have another chance to honor their sacrifice properly. Vraxis reached into a small pouch attached to his harness. He pulled out something that gleamed in the light. I wish to give you this, Danny Harper. He held out a scale. It was the size of Danny's palm. Deep red like polished ruby, with an inner glow that seemed to pulse with its own light. Danny knew what it was. Dragon scales were precious, not because they were valuable to sell, but because dragons only gave them to beings they respected deeply. Commander, I can't accept this. I just gave you a seat. You gave a forgotten old warrior his dignity, Vraxis corrected. You reminded me that honor still exists in the younger species. You did what your kind does best. You saw a problem, and you solved it without expecting anything in return. Very human. Very admirable. Take the scale. Danny took it carefully. It was warm in his hand, and lighter than he expected. Thank you, Commander. I'll treasure it. See that you do. Now, eat something. You look half-starved. They spent the next hour talking. Vraxis shared stories of the Void War, of battles fought in the darkness between stars, of last stands and desperate victories. Danny talked about his work, about the challenge of keeping ancient station systems running with limited parts and even more limited budgets. He talked about his grandfather's stories and growing up on Earth's factory districts, where most people worked hard just to survive. Other passengers began to notice their conversation. Word spread quickly through the ship. A human mechanic had given his first-class seat to a dragon veteran. Now, they were sharing the lounge like old friends. Some species found it strange. Humans were barely a century into space travel. They were newcomers to the galactic community. They were known for being practical and efficient. Not for grand gestures toward alien war heroes. But Danny didn't think about any of that. He just enjoyed listening to Vraxis's stories and the rare privilege of learning from someone who had lived for centuries. Then the ship's lights flickered. It was barely noticeable. Just a brief interruption in power. But Vraxis stopped mid-sentence. His head lifted, scales rippling along his spine in a way that made Danny think of a dog raising its hackles. Did you feel that? The dragon asked quietly. The lights flickered. Probably just a minor power fluctuation. These old transport ships, the ship shuddered. Not violently, but enough that drinks sloshed in their containers, and several passengers made sounds of alarm. Captain Kelso's voice came through the ship's communication system. Attention all passengers. We are experiencing minor technical difficulties. Our navigation system is recommending a small course correction. There is no cause for concern. We will arrive at our destination on schedule. Vraxis's claws extended, gripping the edge of his seating pod. The metal bent under the pressure. Commander? Danny asked. What's wrong? I know this feeling. Vraxis said, his voice low and dangerous. I have felt it before. Long ago. When the harvesters hunted in packs, and we dragons flew out to meet them. The harvesters are gone. They were destroyed in the war. So everyone believes, so we all hoped. The dragon stood up, his massive form dominating the lounge. Other passengers backed away nervously. But I fought them for years. I learned their patterns, their tactics, their hunting behaviors. And I feel them now. Danny stood up too, his heart starting to race. You think harvesters are out there? I think we should speak with the captain. Now. They made their way to the bridge, Vraxis moving with surprising speed despite his size and age. The first-class passengers pressed themselves against the walls to let him pass. Danny hurried after him. The bridge doors opened to reveal Captain Kelso and his crew hunched over their instruments. The displays showed normal space outside. They had dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Captain, Vraxis said. Report. Kelso turned, his small eyes wide with fear. Commander, I was about to call for you. Our sensors detected 3 objects ahead. They appeared so suddenly that our collision avoidance system forced us out of FTL. Show me, Vraxis commanded. The main display changed. 3 shapes hung in the darkness of space, each one angular and wrong. They looked like geometric nightmares, all sharp edges and impossible angles, even through the screen, even after 50 years of dormancy. Danny recognized them from his grandfather's descriptions. Harvesters. Impossible. Kelso whispered. They were all destroyed. Every last one. The war ended 50 years ago. Apparently, Vraxis said grimly, someone forgot to tell them that. The harvesters began to move. Their angular forms rotated slowly, scanning beams sweeping across space. Searching. Hunting. Looking for prey. Danny felt the dragon's scale in his pocket grow warm against his leg. He looked up at Vraxis and saw an old warrior preparing for a battle he thought he would never fight again. The ceremony would have to wait. First, they had to survive. The first cutting beam missed the transport by less than 50 meters. Danny saw it slice through the darkness. A line of pure destructive energy that made his eyes hurt to look at. If it had connected, it would have carved through the ship like a knife through paper. Evasive maneuvers, Kelso screamed, his small legs working the controls frantically. The transport lurched to the side. Passengers throughout the ship cried out in alarm. Danny grabbed onto a console to keep from falling. Vraxis spread his remaining wing for balance, his claws digging into the metal floor. They've locked onto us, one of the crew members reported, tracking our movements. Shields are active, but they won't hold long against sustained fire. Return fire, Kelso commanded. Sir, we're a civilian transport. We only have point defense lasers for debris. They're useless against harvesters. Another beam lanced out from the nearest harvester. This one grazed the ship's shields. The entire vessel shook violently. Lights flickered, and several systems began screaming warnings. Shields down to 70% from one hit, the crew member reported. His voice was shaking. At this rate, we have maybe 4 more hits before we're breached. Danny watched the tactical display. The 3 harvesters were moving in a coordinated pattern, slowly surrounding the transport. They moved with mechanical precision, predicting every evasive maneuver Kelso attempted. It was like watching a pack of wolves corner their prey. They're hurting us, Vraxis said quietly. Classic harvester tactic. Pin the target, disable propulsion, then take their time dismantling the ship. They'll process everyone on board into fuel. How long do we have? Danny asked. Minutes, maybe less. Throughout the ship, panic was spreading. Danny could hear it through the open communication channels. Passengers screaming. Parents trying to calm terrified children. Species who had never seen combat suddenly facing the monsters from old war stories. I'm calling for help, Kelso said. Broadcasting distress on all frequencies. The nearest military patrol is hours away, Vraxis replied. We do not have hours. A third beam hit the shield's dead center. The transport's lights went out completely for 3 seconds before emergency power kicked in. Red warning lights bathed everything in bloody color. Shields at 40%. The crew member reported. That last hit damaged our primary power coupling. We're losing capacity fast. Then we fight back, Vraxis said. He turned to face Kelso directly. I will take a powered suit and exit the ship. Draw their fire while you run. Commander, no. Kelso's entire body trembled. You can't face 3 harvesters alone. It's suicide. I have faced worse odds. If my death buys time for this ship to escape, it is a worthy trade. There has to be another way, Danny said. His mind was racing, trying to think like a mechanic instead of a scared passenger. Captain, what kind of systems does this ship have? Tools? Equipment? We're a transport, Kelso said helplessly. We have maintenance tools. Some mining lasers for clearing debris from our path. Basic repair equipment. Nothing that could hurt a harvester. Mining lasers, Danny repeated. An idea was forming. A crazy, probably impossible idea, but it was better than letting Vraxis throw his life away. How powerful are they? Standard industrial grade. They can cut through most asteroids. Why? Because I've worked with mining lasers my whole career. And I've seen harvester technology. Danny moved to the console and started pulling up system diagrams. Humans have been reverse engineering harvester tech for decades. We use it in our mining equipment. The cutting beams use a focused particle stream with a specific frequency. If we could boost the mining lasers and tune them to match that frequency, you want to turn mining equipment into weapons, Vraxis said. There was something like approval in his voice. More than that, these harvesters are old, 50 years dormant. Their adaptive programming might be slow to respond to their own technology being used against them. Danny's fingers flew over the controls, calling up more diagrams. And I can boost the shield harmonics. I did something similar during that station repair. If I route auxiliary power through the secondary coupling and reverse the polarity, that's insane, the crew member said. The power surge could blow half our systems. We're dead in 5 minutes anyway, Danny pointed out. What do we have to lose? Another beam hit. The ship groaned like a living thing in pain. Shields at 20%, the crew member announced. Next hit might breach the hull. Do it, Kelso said. Mr. Harper, you have full access to our systems. Whatever you need. Danny got to work. His hands moved on autopilot, making connections and rerouting power that should have been impossible. But he had spent years making impossible repairs on stations that should have fallen apart decades ago. He knew how to push systems past their limits. I'll need someone in the maintenance pod, he said as he worked. The mining lasers have to be aimed manually from there. And whoever does it will be exposed to intense radiation from the power surge. No species can survive that level of radiation, the crew member said. It would be lethal in minutes. Most species, Danny corrected. But humans come from a high-gravity death world. We have higher radiation tolerance than almost anyone else in the galaxy. I can do it. You'll still suffer radiation poisoning, Vraxis said. Perhaps fatal. Maybe. But I've got a better chance than anyone else on this ship. I just need someone to call out targeting solutions while I work the controls. Someone with combat experience who knows how harvesters move. Vraxis was quiet for a moment. Then that grinding laugh came again. You clever human. You knew I would volunteer. I was hoping. The pod is small, though. And enclosed. I know dragons have trouble with confined spaces after the war. Yes. Vraxis flexed his claws. Many of my kind cannot bear enclosed spaces anymore. The trauma runs deep. But you are offering me a chance to fight these machines again, to face the enemy that took my wing and my wingmates. I will not hide on the bridge, while a young mechanic risks his life alone. Then let's go, Danny said. We don't have much time. They ran through the ship together, the dragon and the human. Passengers pressed against walls to let them pass. Word had spread that they were going to fight back. Some looked hopeful. Others looked at them like they were already dead. The maintenance pod was attached to the ship's outer hull, a tiny transparent bubble with barely enough room for 2 beings. It was designed for 1 crew member to perform exterior repairs, not for combat. Danny squeezed inside first, strapping himself into the control seat. Vraxis followed, folding his massive body into the cramped space. His scales scraped against the walls. Danny could see the dragon's breathing speed up. Saw fear flicker in those ancient eyes. "You don't have to do this, Commander," Danny said quietly. "I can try to manage the targeting myself." "No," Vraxis said through gritted teeth. "I have run from my fears for 50 years. No more." "Seal the pod." Danny hit the controls. The pod's door closed with a hiss. Through the transparent canopy, they could see open space and the 3 harvesters circling like sharks. "Routing power now," Danny said into his communicator. "Captain, give us targeting data." "Sending now," Kelso responded. "And Mr. Harper? Thank you. Both of you." The pod hummed as massive amounts of power flooded into the mining lasers. Danny felt the radiation immediately. A prickling sensation on his skin that would only get worse. His hands found the controls. They were designed for cutting asteroids, not fighting ancient war machines, but he had made do with worse. "Harvester positions locked," Vraxis said. His voice was steady despite the tight space, despite the fear. "The nearest one is preparing another attack. Adjust firing angle by 3 degrees left." Danny made the adjustment. "Ready? Fire," Vraxis commanded. Danny pulled the trigger. The modified mining laser shot out in a brilliant stream of particles, brighter than any star. It flew through space toward the harvester, and missed by 50 meters. "Damn it!" Danny cursed. His hands were shaking from adrenaline and the radiation already affecting his nervous system. He felt Vraxis's foreclaw rest gently on his shoulder. The touch was surprisingly gentle for something so large. "Peace, young one. Breathe. I will guide you. Together we can do this." The harvester fired back. Its beam came straight at the pod. Vraxis called out an angle, and Danny jerked the pod to the side using its maneuvering thrusters. The beam passed so close that Danny felt heat through the canopy. "Again," Vraxis said calmly. "Lead the target by 2 meters. Fire on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark." Danny fired. This time the beam connected. It hit the harvester's propulsion section and carved through its armor. The machine spun wildly, trailing debris and sparks. "Good hit," Vraxis said. There was pride in his voice. "The other 2 are adapting. They're splitting up. This will be harder." The battle had truly begun, and Danny realized that he and Vraxis had found a rhythm, the dragon's centuries of combat experience meeting human mechanical intuition. Ancient warrior and young mechanic, fighting impossible odds together, just like his grandfather's stories, just like the old days at Saturn's rings, history repeating itself in the strangest way possible. The 2 remaining harvesters moved like dancers performing a deadly routine. They circled the transport in opposite directions, forcing Danny to choose which threat to face while the other lined up its shot. Vraxis called out targeting solutions faster than any computer could calculate, his ancient combat instincts reading patterns in the machine's movements. "Left target, 5 degrees up, lead by 3 meters, Vraxis said. "Fire now." Danny squeezed the trigger. The mining laser shot out and caught the harvester along its sensor array. Sparks flew from the damaged section, but the machine kept moving. "Hit but not disabled," Vraxis reported. "The right one is preparing to fire. Dodge right, full thrust." Danny slammed the maneuvering controls. The pod jerked sideways so hard that his harness cut into his shoulders. A cutting beam sliced through the space where they had been seconds before. "Good reflexes," Vraxis said. "Very human. Your quick reactions are keeping us alive." Danny's hands were shaking worse now. The radiation was building up in his body with every second they stayed in the pod. His skin felt hot, like he had spent too long in the sun. His head was starting to hurt, but he pushed through it, focusing on the controls and Vraxis's steady voice. "They're learning our pattern," Vraxis observed. "Adapting to our firing rhythm. We need to change tactics." "I'm open to suggestions," Danny said through gritted teeth. Another dodge, another near miss. The harvesters were getting faster, their prediction algorithms adjusting to human reaction times. The damaged one. It's favoring its undamaged side, exposing its ventral power core. If you can hit it there, the feedback will destroy it. But the shot is difficult. Very precise timing required. How precise? You would need to fire the moment it rotates to fire at us. The core is only exposed for perhaps 2 seconds. Miss that window and it will kill us instead. No pressure then, Danny muttered. He lined up the shot, waiting. His vision was starting to blur slightly from the radiation. Sweat dripped into his eyes. The targeting reticle wobbled on his screen. The harvester rotated. Its weapons array began to glow with building energy. Now, Vraxis commanded. Danny fired. For a moment that stretched into eternity, he watched the mining laser streak across space. Then, it hit. The beam punched straight into the harvester's power core. The machine exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the entire area. Debris scattered in all directions. The transport's shields absorbed the shockwave, holding firm. Excellent shot, Vraxis said. But the last one is coming straight at us. It's abandoning tactics. Pure, aggressive charge. Danny saw it on the display. The final harvester was accelerating directly toward the pod, all weapons firing simultaneously. It wasn't trying to be clever anymore. It was going to overwhelm them with raw firepower. I can't dodge all those beams, Danny said. His voice sounded strange in his own ears, slightly slurred from radiation sickness. There are too many. Then we don't dodge, Vraxis replied. He reached over and began working a secondary control panel that Danny hadn't noticed. We end this. One final strike with everything we have. What are you doing? Routing all remaining power to the mining laser. Every system we can drain. Life support, maneuvering, shields, everything. One massive pulse that will either destroy the harvester or destroy us trying. That'll burn out half the transport systems, Danny protested. Could strand everyone in deep space. If we don't stop this harvester, everyone dies anyway. You said it yourself earlier. What do we have to lose? Danny looked at the incoming machine. At the multiple targeting lasers, painting their pod with deadly precision. At the certain death hurtling toward them at impossible speed. Then he looked at Vraxis, at the old dragon warrior who had already lost so much in one war and was about to risk everything again. Do it, Danny said. Root the power. His console lit up like a sun going nova as energy flooded in from every system on the transport. The mining laser began to glow, brighter and brighter, building to levels it was never designed to handle. Danny could feel heat radiating from the equipment. Warning alarms screamed about critical overload. The harvester is 15 seconds from firing range, Vraxis said. We need to fire first. The laser needs 20 seconds to reach full charge, Danny countered. His hands gripped the controls. We won't make it. Then we fire early. At partial charge, aim for its weapons array. If we can hit it before it fires, its weapons array is its most heavily armored section. Partial charge won't penetrate. 10 seconds. The harvester grew larger in the canopy, its angular form blotting out the stars. Danny could see individual weapons ports glowing with building energy, each one strong enough to punch through their pod like paper. Danny, Vraxis said quietly, it has been an honor to fight beside you. 8 seconds. Danny's mind raced. There had to be a solution. There was always a solution. That's what mechanics did. They found ways to make broken things work. They improvised. They adapted. 6 seconds. And then, he saw it. A pattern in the harvester's code that he recognized. He had seen similar programming in the mining equipment he worked with every day. Humans had reverse-engineered harvester technology decades ago, which meant the harvester's own systems might have predictable patterns. 4 seconds. I've got an idea, Danny said. But you're not going to like it. Tell me quickly. Their weapons all fire from a central power distributor. I've seen similar setups in human mining systems. If I can hit that distributor with a specific frequency pulse, it might feed back into their own weapons array. Might. 2 seconds. 70% chance. Maybe 60. I'm not really sure. I'm guessing based on systems I've worked with and my head is fuzzy from the radiation, and do it, Vraxis commanded. Trust your instincts, young mechanic. Trust your training. Fire. Danny fired at partial charge, adjusting the frequency on pure instinct, aiming for a point on the harvester that his experience said should be the power distributor. The beam shot out, weaker than their previous shots, but carrying a modulated pulse that Danny hoped would do what he needed. The beam hit. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The harvester kept coming, weapons still charging. Danny thought he had miscalculated, that they were about to die. Then, the harvester's entire weapons array lit up at once. Every port, every system, every weapon firing simultaneously in an uncontrolled discharge. The machine was firing on itself, its own weapons tearing into its armor from inside. The explosion was massive. The harvester came apart in chunks of burning metal and cascading energy releases. The shockwave hit the pod hard enough to crack the canopy. Alarms screamed about hull breach. Seal failure, Danny shouted. We're losing atmosphere. He felt Vraxis move behind him, the dragon's massive body pressed against the cracked canopy, his scales forming a living seal over the breach. Get us back to the ship, Vraxis grunted. Quickly, Danny worked the damaged controls with numb fingers. The pod limped back toward the transport's airlock, trailing atmosphere and sparks. His vision was darkening at the edges. He wasn't sure if it was from lack of oxygen or radiation poisoning. Maybe both. Stay with me, Danny Harper, Vraxis said. The dragon's voice seemed to come from very far away. Stay conscious. We're almost there. Known. The airlock door opened. The pod tumbled inside. Emergency teams in protective suits rushed forward. Danny felt hands pulling him from the pod. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't work. The world tilted sideways. Someone caught him before he hit the deck. Through blurring vision, he saw Vraxis being helped out of the pod. The dragon's scales were burned in places where he had shielded Danny from the explosion. Blood leaked from wounds Danny hadn't noticed during the fight. The harvesters? Danny managed to ask. All destroyed, a voice said. Kelso, maybe. You did it. You saved everyone. We did it. Danny corrected, looking at Vraxis. Together. The dragon's ancient eyes met his. Despite the pain, despite the injuries, Vraxis was smiling. Yes. Together. Just as it should be. Then the darkness took Danny completely. And he knew nothing more. Danny woke up in a medical bay that smelled like antiseptic and something else he couldn't identify. His body ached in ways he didn't know were possible. Every muscle felt like it had been worked over with a hammer. His skin was tender and hot. When he tried to sit up, gentle hands pushed him back down. Easy there, a female voice said. You've had a rough few days. Days? Danny forced his eyes to focus. A human woman in a medical uniform stood beside his bed. Her name tag read Dr. Patricia Cruz. How long was I out? He asked. His voice came out as a croak. 3 days. You had severe radiation poisoning. We weren't sure you'd make it. She held up a scanner and ran it over him. But humans are tough. Your body fought through it. You'll make a full recovery, though you'll feel terrible for another week or so. The transport? The passengers? Safe. A Galactic Navy fleet responded to the distress call. They arrived 2 hours after the battle. Everyone survived thanks to you and Commander Vraxis. Vraxis, is he? The commander is fine. Recovering in the bay next door. Dragons heal fast. He's been asking about you every few hours. Dr. Cruz smiled. Actually, a lot of people have been asking about you. You're kind of famous now. What? She activated a screen on the wall. News broadcasts from across the galaxy played in rapid succession. Danny saw footage of the battle, recorded by passengers on the transport. He saw himself and Vraxis in the maintenance pod, fighting the harvesters. The images were grainy but clear enough. Every major news network in the galaxy was showing them. Human mechanic and dragon veteran save transport, one headline read. 50-year-old enemies destroyed by unlikely team, announced another. The power of kindness. How one gesture changed everything, declared a third. I don't understand, Danny said. We just did what we had to do. That's what makes it special, Dr. Cruz replied. You gave up your seat to a stranger. A simple act of kindness. And because of that, you were in the right place at the right time to save hundreds of lives. The galaxy is calling it the most human thing they've ever seen. Before Danny could respond, the door opened. Captain Kelso hurried in, followed by a tall woman in a Galactic Navy uniform. She had 4 stars on her collar. Danny tried to sit up straighter. At ease, Mr. Harper, the woman said. Her voice carried authority that made even lying down feel like standing at attention. I'm Admiral Christine Hayes, commander of the 5th Fleet. I wanted to thank you personally for your actions. You're Christine Hayes? Danny asked. The Admiral Hayes? You know of me? Commander Vraxis mentioned you. Said you commanded at the Battle of New Terra during the Void War. He remembers that? Admiral Hayes looked surprised. I was just a junior officer then. But yes, I was there. Commander Vraxis and his wing saved my entire fleet that day. We would have been destroyed if not for the dragons. I've never forgotten that debt. She moved closer to Danny's bed. Which is why what happened on that transport matters so much to me. The harvesters we thought extinct are active again. Someone or something reactivated them. They were targeting the route to the remembrance ceremony. If they had succeeded, thousands of veterans and leaders would have died. The galaxy would have been thrown into chaos. But how did old harvester units get reactivated? Danny asked. We're investigating. But here's what we know so far. You recognized patterns in their programming because humans have been using reverse-engineered harvester technology for decades. In your mining equipment, your construction tools, your industrial systems, you've been living with their technology, learning its weaknesses, understanding its patterns. Admiral Hayes pulled up a holographic display. Every harvester ever built followed the same core programming, the same vulnerabilities. Because you work with systems based on that technology every day, you knew exactly how to exploit those vulnerabilities. A warrior species couldn't have done what you did. They would have fought with weapons and tactics. But a mechanic who fixes broken things for a living, you saw a machine and you knew how to break it. Very human, Danny said quietly, remembering Vraxis's words. Exactly. The Galactic Council has requested that human engineers help secure every old Void War site across the galaxy. We need your practical knowledge, your understanding of harvester systems. We need mechanics like you who can see what warriors miss. I'm just a station mechanic, Danny protested. I fix life support and patch hull breaches. I'm not special. You gave up your seat to a veteran you'd never met, Admiral Hayes countered. You risked your life to save a ship full of strangers. You found a solution that saved everyone when death was certain. That's exactly the kind of special the galaxy needs right now. The door opened again. This time Vraxis entered, moving slowly but under his own power. His scales gleamed from recent healing treatments. When he saw Danny awake, relief flooded his ancient features. Young Danny Harper lives, the dragon said warmly. You're one to talk, Danny replied. You had burns all over. You used your body to seal the hull breach. Of course, you gave me your seat. The least I could do was ensure you survived our battle. Vraxis moved to the other side of Danny's bed. I have been watching the news broadcasts. The galaxy cannot stop talking about us. About the human and the dragon who fought together. It's making waves everywhere, Admiral Hayes added. Other traumatized veterans are coming forward, inspired by your story. Species that have been isolated since the war are reaching out. You've reminded everyone what cooperation can accomplish. We need to hold a press conference, Kelso said. Tell your story properly. No, Danny said immediately. I didn't do any of this for recognition. I just saw someone who needed help, and I helped them. That's all. That humility is very human too, Vraxis observed. But Admiral Hayes is correct. Your story matters. It reminds the galaxy of what we can accomplish together. Then tell them we did it together, Danny insisted. Not just me. Not just you. Together. That's the whole point, isn't it? Different species. Different backgrounds. Working toward the same goal, Admiral Hayes and Vraxis exchanged glances. Something unspoken passed between them. "The Galactic Council wants to offer you a position," Admiral Hayes said. "Liaison between human engineering teams and galactic security. You'd work directly with me, coordinating efforts to secure old war sites and prevent more harvester reactivations." "I don't know anything about politics or diplomacy," Danny said. "Which is exactly why we want you," Vraxis replied. "You see problems, and you fix them. You don't get caught up in bureaucracy or species politics. You just do what needs to be done. The galaxy needs more beings like that." "I'll have to think about it," Danny said. "Take your time. Recover first." Admiral Hayes handed him a datapad. "But consider this. What you did saved hundreds of lives. What you could do in this position might save millions. Maybe prevent another war entirely." She left with Kelso, leaving Danny alone with Vraxis. The dragon settled carefully into a chair designed for large species. "You don't have to accept," Vraxis said quietly. "If you wish to return to your mining rigs and your station repairs, no one would blame you. You've done more than enough." Danny thought about his life before the transport. 16-hour shifts fixing broken systems, sleeping in cramped quarters, moving from station to station, never staying anywhere long enough to call it home. It was honest work, and he was good at it. But it was also lonely. "My grandfather used to say that the dragons taught the galaxy what sacrifice meant," Danny said. "That you showed everyone how to stand together against impossible odds. I always thought those were just stories. Things from the past that didn't matter anymore. I'm C. And now? Now I think maybe those stories need to continue. New chapters. New heroes. Different species working together. Not because they have to, but because they choose to." He pulled out the dragon scale Vraxis had given him. It still glowed with inner light, warm against his palm. "I'll take the position," Danny decided. "But on one condition. You have to work with me. The galaxy doesn't just need human mechanics. It needs dragon warriors who remember why they fought. Together we can do more than either of us could alone." Vraxis's grinding laugh filled the room. "I am old, Danny Harper. I thought my fighting days were over. But you have reminded me that honor demands we serve as long as we are able. Very well. I accept. We will face this new challenge together." 6 months passed quickly. Danny and Vraxis traveled to war sites across the galaxy, coordinating security efforts and training teams. They spoke at the Remembrance Ceremony. Finally held without incident, they unveiled a new monument to cross-species cooperation. The inscription read, "Impossible becomes possible when kindness leads to courage." On Earth, Danny's grandfather Pete watched the ceremony broadcast with tears streaming down his face. He saw his grandson standing beside a dragon veteran, representing everything Pete had witnessed at Saturn's rings 50 years before. The sacrifice, the courage, the willingness to stand together against the darkness. Other dragons began emerging from their isolation, inspired by Vraxis's return to service. Young beings from dozens of species applied to join the security teams, wanting to be part of something larger than themselves. Human mechanics found themselves in demand across the galaxy, not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they understood practical solutions and never gave up on fixing what was broken. One evening, Danny and Vraxis sat in an observation lounge on the Galactic Hub Station. They were reviewing data from the latest site inspections, preparing for the next mission. Other species representatives would join them soon. The team was growing, becoming something neither of them had imagined when they first met on that crowded transport. "Do you ever think about that day?" Danny asked. "If you hadn't needed a seat? If I hadn't given mine up?" "Often," Vraxis admitted. "The smallest choices create the largest ripples. If you had kept your seat, we would never have met. I would have found other passage, or perhaps abandoned my journey entirely. The harvesters would have reached the ceremony. Thousands would have died. All because of a seat on a transport. No," Vraxis corrected gently. "Because of kindness. Because you saw someone in need, and you helped without thinking of reward or recognition. Very human." Very heroic. The galaxy is better because beings like you exist, Danny Harper. Danny looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, teams were working to prevent the next crisis. Species that had barely spoken to each other before now collaborated daily. All because a tired mechanic had given up his first-class seat to a dragon veteran he'd never met. I still don't think I'm special, Danny said. Good, Vraxis replied with that grinding laugh. The moment you think you're special is the moment you stop being special. Stay humble, young friend. Stay kind, and keep fixing what's broken. The galaxy needs mechanics far more than it needs heroes. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars, planning the next mission, and living proof that sometimes the impossible becomes possible. Not through grand gestures or mighty battles, but through simple acts of kindness that ripple across the galaxy, changing everything.